Me?
We will get to it later. Market's looking pretty solid today, though. Looking for a little bit of a push. Gold looks a bit
Yeah,
weak.
I am a little bit dubious.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that it's coming down at some point, but I suppose it's one of those you just let go, don't you? And when it comes back, it comes back because it will. I've just been looking to see what the potential could be. I mean, we need to be on our mettle really because I think Trump is probably going to be ramping up rhetoric against China, which I think he's done it again today, but there hasn't
Had
been.
he? Right. Okay.
Yeah, there hasn't been too much in the way of reaction to that. Um,
RBA
ISM.
statement that's out, of course, a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, I did. I did have a little look at that. I didn't see too much in the way of meat on the bones, but effectively they've left rates on hold, haven't they?
Yeah,
And
it was
actually the
kind of in
Aussie.
two parts, wasn't it? It was like a relaxing of bond buying, so
Yeah,
that I guess is positive
yeah,
if you're looking at an Aussie dollar perspective.
yeah,
But then the rest of it wasn't that upbeat. I wouldn't have thought.
yeah,
In fact, it was
yeah,
very in depth, far more in depth, and again on the one subject, which is fairly understandable. The one subject is the big elephant in the room that just won't go away.
yes, yes. And what
Wish it
was
would.
said on that was there much that we could garner from that or not really?
Oh, it was very much a case of. I think he gave three base strategies, which depend entirely on what happens, and one, of course, is if the virus. He didn't mention a vaccine, which is interesting. I don't think
Mm,
one of them was that if what seems to be happening at the moment continues to happen, and that is we're getting a downturn in cases, a downturn in deaths, etc. Then, if that happens on a global basis, the economy should recover, by the end of next year, perhaps.
yeah.
Case number two is if the easing of restrictions around the world gets a second spike, then this is going to be far more prolonged, and
Mm,
and that will create issues, of course, not only in Australian economy but the global economy, but more so the uncertainty that brings around liquidity
yeah.
and how people survive, and all sorts of horrible scenarios if this does go to a second spike.
Mm,
And that, of course, is what everyone fears.
yes.
So it was more a case of what their attitude would be in those circumstances, and they are actually going to release a policy around that. I think it's on Thursday.
Right.
So there's going to be a secondary um, policy statement, if you like, but
Yeah.
focusing exactly on those circumstances that I've just described, and probably even a third scenario.
Right. Right. Well, we
So
do
I
have
think
risk on today.
the easing of QE was
Yes.
a little bit positive, but
Yeah.
the rest of it, you didn't really say too much, I suppose.
Well, I
It's
guess
what
I guess
everyone's thinking.
yeah. Well, the global markets are certainly in a risk on mood today. We've got the FTSE 100 in a really interesting level here. I'll quickly get to this for the guys in the room. Um,
Sure.
the FTSE's at an interesting level. Good morning, Lewis. Hopefully you we're dead set for later on, buddy. I really apologise about yesterday. Not quite sure what had quite happened in the chain, but hopefully we could be all right.
Didn't miss much, Lewis. I got to tell you,
No, it was
it
quite
was it
quiet
was pretty
actually.
quiet.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, so global equity. So we're looking really for longs in the FTSE, not at this level, but interestingly, if you look at the FTSE and where it's currently trading, is right on top of its channel here. Hold on, I keep switching the wrong chart over. Oops, that's the wrong one now, isn't it? I want that to be that, and I want this to be. I want this to be this. There we go. Okay, so let's have a look at it. So we got a daily chart pattern that we were talking about a week ago with this rising wedge, which is now broken down. but a market which has moved to the upside. This is called a belt hold, and the belt hold is very bullish. So the suggestion for me would be that we'll probably ease down first. I think that this particular area is going to be too difficult for the market just to pop straight above. But I think we'll probably ease down this morning to start with, and if we can ease to the downside just a little bit, then it would suggest that, considering the mood out there, that we're probably going to be going a bit higher. So maybe coming down into this area here. Which is around about 30 pips below where we are now, will create some buying opportunities, and then we'll have another bite at that particular line again. So we've looked on the daily chart, on the clean chart. So now let's just bring the pivots back in and see what that would suggest, and see where that suggests we come to. This is one trend line here. Yeah, I mean, that's really suggesting if that holds for long enough, it might just about run into the monthly pivot by the time the US session is in play, and that would be quite positive, obviously, on the FTSE. So I'll be looking for a hold early doors. Gold is also on the move, and I'm looking at gold for some further downside here. I think gold is probably going to start an ascent down. Tested the daily pivot, tested the weekly pivot, excuse me, and the daily pivot's very early on, and it's failing there. So gold is looking like a potential play now for some further downside, and looks pretty good. I have to say, mate, it looks pretty good. I'm not sure whether we've seen the best and cleanest way to get into this, and this particular bar is a little bit problematic in some respects, but we are starting to see reversal patterns now on gold, and this is suggesting that we probably do have a little head and shoulders going on here on the 4 hour. So there's the right shoulder. That's the left shoulder. There's a head, and there's the right shoulder there, and that would put us with a neckline somewhere along here. So breaking through that neckline would probably, if you were to do a measured move on this, just eyeballing it, it suggests that we're going to get pretty close to this monthly pivot. I would suggest that it's almost there, maybe not quite, but that's going to drag us down to the monthly pivot. So gold breaks down, then I would suggest that we probably see that monthly pivot today. Let's have a look at what could happen with gold in the longer term. Actually, let's come back to this, mate, after you've placed the pound trade. I think we are looking for long stocks, right? Early on this morning, but not at this particular level. This is a sell zone. So until we either break through the trend line and then come back and retest, or we come down a bit lower, we're not going to do anything on the FTSE anyway. Gold is not attractive enough at this stage to trade either. It's got to break through that level if we're going to trade that. So let's get to the pound trade, and then we'll come back to these in a moment.
Roger D. Okay. It started to push towards an entry very quickly. I don't know that that's been triggered yet. So let's have a look, see. I haven't placed the order, so it hasn't been triggered. But there's the order there. The OCO trade today is sell at 124.41. And your stop loss is 1.2490, and the buy is the reverse of that, 1.2490, and the stop loss is 1.2441. Let's place the orders. We should go with the sell first, I suspect. Got a partial loser yesterday. So the week needs to, it's Wednesday. No, it's not Wednesday. It's only Tuesday. Wednesday's winner day.
Yeah.
124.41 and 124.90 is the sell. 124.90 and 124.41 will be the buy. Just quickly want to go to Aussie yen after this. By limit you goose. By stop. My goose were very noisy this afternoon. Speaking of goose. Okay, so there's the pound trade. Very quick analysis. We'll come back to the pound a little bit later, but very quick analysis tells me that we are in the middle of nowhere. And really, I can't pick a direction for the pound at the moment. I suspect, well, no, I don't suspect, I'm waiting for a significant lower high that we haven't had since we came off the top of this range. So on that basis, I'm waiting for a test of the weekly pivot, and a bar that looks something like that would be ideal, or that would be ideal at that point. If I saw that, in fact, if this were to get off its fat backside and actually get up there and test the weekly pivot, then come back and close underneath the monthly, that'd be a pretty good signal for us to go short. So we want this bar to get up here, maybe pierce through it, then close just underneath the monthly pivot. That'd be pretty cool. I'd be happy to have a good look at that on the daily tomorrow, certainly. But on the 4-hour chart today, how does that look? Can we get something out of that? Same. I'd be happy with that. Although I do want to see a white body. So I'd like to see the candle pierce the weekly pivot and maybe close about here somewhere. That'd be probably okay by me. All right, let's quickly go to Aussie yen. Those of you who were in last night's show, and I apologize for those who couldn't get in, and those who did got in, got in late because we thought we were on a different platform, frankly. So you shouldn't be in this trade. You really should not be in this trade. Why? Well, because we placed the order here and this was an hourly chart. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 hours went by before you got triggered into that trade. Nah, that's not me. Don't want that. TP1 would have been missed had you left it open, but you really need to count probably 6 candles, but I wouldn't have even bothered with 6. In fact, I didn't, because I went to bed and canceled the order. So you just don't want that to happen. That's garbage.
Oh, just took a dive to the downside, mate.
Did it?
Yeah, big dive.
Somebody jumped on it, did they?
I think so.
Okay. So my advice to you guys, if you are in Aussie yen out of last night's show, then get some profit in the bank and get yourself safe, because anything could happen from here. Okay, that is it. Pound Aussie, I'll come back to. Oh, hang on, very, very quickly. Pound Aussie on the weekly pivot. Yeah. Don't want to trade it long, though, I've got to say. I'm not a fan of trading Pound Aussie long, but I do see that is a very, very nice place for those who were thinking this is reversing. I don't think it's reversing, and I don't think the Aussie news today was bearish enough to actually turn that around. A lot depends on the pound itself, of course, but I kind of see this in here for a bit, Lewis. I'm not sure we're moving too far anytime soon, but if we are, I don't want to see it. Oh, sorry, my bias is not to the upside, although yes, there is an untested monthly pivot above. That is true. If it were to go long, it probably would suit me down to the ground. If it were to test the monthly pivot, then come back underneath and retest, happy days. I'll be happy to trade it short again. But at this point in time, I absolutely get what you're seeing. Potential for this to bounce certainly to the daily pivot if you can find it on a smaller time frame. I'll even have a look at that a little bit later when I'm trading 30-minute bars. But at the moment, do I see that opportunity? No. A little bit of a hold here, definitely. But yeah, but it looks nice. Looks appetizing, I've got to say. A bounce back to the daily pivot, but I don't know that I can see it going too much further than that. But if it did, as I said, and broke that trade line, then that would set up a nice short for me. So getting into imagination gear, that's pretty much what I'm seeing at the moment. Right, Ash, back to gold quickly. I
Yeah, let's have a
suppose.
look. It's just taken a big drop to the downside. Haven't heard anything of a reason why, but it's just broken that low down here. So I think there's some. Well, I mean, you know, when I see this, what I want to know is there dollar strength? You know, is there is there something going on here which would suggest that that gold should be moving moving lower? Let me just double check this on there.
As you say, Trump may have said something, has he? Although he'd be sound asleep.
No, nothing reported. I mean, I just looked across the board. I mean, the other ones that are, in fact, let's just check the dollar against some of these other currencies. Gold, sorry, dollar is pushing up against the yen right now. It's fairly flat against the pound, but you can see that the pound has weakened a little bit. The Aussie dollar has just popped down, maybe just a shade as well, and euro dollar, which is, you know, the euro dollar I was quite interested in for a potential long. I think we had the pattern on the daily was of interest to me with this one, with the trend line down here, and it looked at initially as we came into the day like that was close enough to a touch to suggest that if we start to see a basing out down here, that we might push higher. But we're pushing right back into the low of that trend line now. So I suppose if it comes down and retest that area, that would suggest further downside in the euro.
Yeah, I'm a bit keen on it. Short.
Yeah, like
Euro
a short
Aussie
on
in
that one.
particular. Yep. But not set up yet. But it's looking a lot better on your chart right now.
Yeah, that does look pretty good, doesn't it? So, so yeah, it's starting to show some signs of strength. Just looking to get some upside against this on the dollar CAD as well, bouncing off the monthly pivots. If gold is to move, sorry, if the dollar is to move to the upside, this may not be a bad option. But looking at WTI has had a pretty good run, you know, from the monthly pivot. It's had a pretty good run to the upside. So, not sure whether we'd really want to go anywhere near the dollar CAD, but this one's interesting. I think still the Kiwi dollar for some downside could be of interest as well. It's got a little ways to go before I'd be that convinced about this one. You know, I'm looking at this on a 4-hour chart, and just seeing that it is, you know, it's testing away from that weekly pivot. But I quite like, it's quite steep, but I quite like the fact that we've broken down that particular level. It's untested, which is a bit of a problem for me. But I suppose if the price action does change and we're really looking at something a bit flatter, then it's possible. Let me see what that looks like. No, that's not so good either. It's possible that we you know, we could maybe try and pick this up, but again, it'd have to get under that particular level there. So looks like some of these charts need still some development going on, mate. I don't have a whole bunch out there. Gold was one of the ones of interest, and I suppose if anybody's interested in gold, all you're really looking for now, I think, to get into this one is an entry on a short-term time frame. You know, the hourly it looks like it's broken down. A retest of the neckline would suggest that you know, if that was unable to get back above that point by the top of the hour, that would suggest that we are probably looking for some further moves lower in gold. Maybe it's more of a gold story than anything else. I haven't checked the seasonals on gold, which I will quickly do. FTSE continues to hold where it is, so there's nothing to report on that. I'm just going to check the seasonals in gold. Okay. Right, so seasonality in gold. Let's see.
How much weight do you reckon we can put on seasonality at the moment? I think it's probably coming back into an area where it's probably worthy of our attention. But, you know, to me, coronavirus was all about maybe seasonality is just not the flavour of the month. slash
No,
quarter, perhaps slash
no,
6 months.
I agree with that. So you look at May, May for gold, and it does looks like the top line here is the weighted average. So what tends to happen in a the price action here in the most recent time, and the bottom line is the historical average, so over 45 years. And it looks fairly flat actually through May. It looks like it takes a dip towards the end of May, but it looks fairly flat in May. Little rise at the start of June, and then it looks like it hits its low around about the middle of June before starting an ascent. So I suppose looking at this, it would suggest that maybe we do have some relative weakness across the board with gold. The COTS data, well, I suppose this 84% on the index 6 is the index 6 is over the short term. That's suggesting that the gold could be at a fairly high price here. I mean, we could delve right into it, but it does become, I think, to a degree, a bit arbitrary to kind of like try and figure out what people are really doing from a little bit of the charts. But we can certainly suggest it suggests that when the percentage of the commercials are in that area of 84%, it suggests that that it's probably more likely to come down than were. This is the commercial charts here. So you can see that there are more sellers in the market on the commercial. These are the buyers down here. So the net is around about 293,000 to the downside. So the net is for more selling in gold than buying. Non-commercials are still buying because they just buy the trend. They will just fixate on the trend. But the commercials are the real players. What are they looking to get rid of? And you have to suggest that if the current price that gold's at on a longer term basis would make it a pretty attractive business for those in there. And the commercials are basically people that physically touch it. They're the guys that put their hands on the product. The non-commercials are the speculators, the banks, the hedge funds, and they will just speculate on the movement. But it looks like the commercials have, and they have been trying to, they've been selling off all the way up in the rally, but they're still quite keen to get rid of gold at these particular levels because obviously they own as much as they can, they own as much as they do, and if the price is where it is right now, then they're going to make a pretty substantial killing. So there may well be some more gold, just relatively speaking. That is, we know there's not probably enough out there to supply the demand. But I suppose
got to be pretty happy chappies, haven't they? The commercials over the last goodness knows
in this
how
commodity, long. Absolutely, and this is the thing, isn't it? It's all kind of I guess maybe luck comes into play. Well, I suppose it does because many things that happen in your life are purely circumstantial. I sort of. I think that
now you've opened a Pandora's box. You don't want to start me on that one. That's a late night. That one.
Well, do you know what my girlfriend once said to me? Well, how is it that that the pilots always seem to marry the stewardesses? And I said, well, that sounds to me like it is purely circumstantial because they're the people that they meet. They could be anybody really that they run into, but the fact that not anybody in the way that you settle down with somebody, but anybody in as much that they could be in any industry. But if you are rubbing shoulders with somebody every day because you're at work, it's circumstance that's brought those people together. I mean, if you believe in universal order and everything else, that may well be a factor that you were drawn to that job. But doctors might have a high percentage of marrying other doctors or nurses, and nurses might have a high... The
problem is with that, it's generally their second marriage. They get divorced.
Yeah, they do. That's true. That's true. Yeah, the first marriage is the person they met at school. Again, circumstantial.
That's right. And then work brings that all undone. Gee whiz, I've seen a bit of that go on in my time.
Yeah. Absolutely. So,
but you're right. Yes, I totally get your point.
And that keeps me awake at night. But I guess that's the thing for some of these producers. Why did somebody get into working with gold, and maybe again it could be circumstantial. I mean, there are going to be some people that it's their dream, maybe, sort of, from a backwater place in Russia to kind of go and work in California or in San Francisco and work in gold or something. I don't know, but I think generally speaking, it's probably environmental and maybe family driven and everything else that takes you into an industry. But those people that are in gold are having a great time. But anybody that's in oil has probably been having an absolute nightmare, over the same period.
Dear.
So, and I guess that's where trading can be, you're in a better space, because if you can pick the right commodity that's going to rally.
The Beverly Hillbillies definitely got out at the right time. There's no doubt about
it. They did. They got out when it was black and white, and it hadn't even got any color in it. So the commercials anyway. Just back to the commercials and the seasonality. Things are suggesting some easing to the downside with gold, and also when you get moves like this, I mean, these moves are fairly parabolic. The angle is quite steep, isn't it, to the upside here? So I think an easing back down. I mean, I'm surprised it just didn't fall straight off the roof, but that hasn't happened. There's been an easing to the downside, and it looks at this stage that that's going to continue. And maybe some weakness up here. If we check this on some of the longer term time frames, this is the weekly, and this is the monthly. And if you look at this on the monthly, it also looks like we're reaching close to some of the highs we saw back in certainly the highs we saw back in 2012. Not quite at the highs in 2011, but it's a bit lofty up here, isn't it, mate? And when you look at these bars as well, that bar suggested downside. This bar suggested, I'm not really sure. And this bar wasn't able to hold its high. So I think on the longer term, it does suggesting some easing back down. And possibly if we get to some kind of normality, and what you're just saying about the seasonality, if we get to any kind of normality, or maybe we're waiting for some sort of normality, that would also suggest that that an easing back with gold into June would be on the cards. How deep
actually
that
not
is.
a bad bar, that last month's bar. I don't mind that. That's kind of one of my bars.
This one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a bad bar for shorting.
Yeah. It's bullish but bearish.
Yes.
Bearish for me.
It is, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, because it just wasn't able to hold its area up there.
Absolutely, yes. So I actually don't mind that. I'll consider it. I've got a little bit of time. It's the 5th of the month or something. Yeah, a little bit of time. I don't think that'll happen any times. But gold, I just can't trade gold, mate. It's not my thing.
No, well, I get it, mate. I get it. If it shapes up on the chart, then and if people like they're quite happy to trade technicals on anything that they find, then why not gold? But I think that there are some charts that we look at and just go, I've never won with that one. We almost have done our own internal journalizing with something. I've never won with that one. I don't understand it. It doesn't move in the way that I trade, so I'm avoiding it. I think that's perfectly valid.
It is at a big number, 1,700 round number. All of those things that I look for are kind of there. They're kind of there, but we're coming off a bearish engulfing and put in a lower high at the end of the day. Wow. If I saw that on a currency pair, I'd be happy.
Yeah. When I look at gold, I look at it as a bit of a barometer, which we should get to actually for the FTSE 100, because it is so closely correlated. I mean, if we look at the FTSE and look what's happened here, and this is what I was saying yesterday about people buying gold while buying the FTSE at the same time. If you or any equity, if you were to buy gold and buy the FTSE, let's say here. Now that's on the 1st of January, the very first month of the year. Look what would happened. Gold, the FTSE 100 moves to the downside, but gold manages to hedge your position. Probably not 100%, but that would manage to hedge your position out. Now, oftentimes you can buy gold, like here, and you can buy the market. Actually, let's do it here instead. You can buy gold here, moves to the upside. You can buy the stock market, it moves to the upside. So it is a really good hedge against stocks, because if you buy them both, they very rarely both go down. One may go up while the other one goes down. It can happen, but obviously, nothing is perfectly correlated. But gold does tend to be a pretty good hedge if you're looking at stock markets to buy both, because, as I say, if the stock market starts to tank, people will tend, if it's tanked on fear, so people will then tend to go to something like a safe haven, like gold. And
I've got to make too many calculations, mate. It gives me a headache. It really does. So
yeah, well, do you know what?
That's not my thing.
No, and I think the mistake that people make is that they look at the numbers rather than the percentage, because what you've got to know is not how far gold has gone in comparison to an indice, but the percentage gain. Because if gold has gone up 20%, but the FTSE has dropped 18%, then you've made money. And that's, so if we look at this here, the stock market came down 2,800 from a mark of 7,500. So you're looking around about 35%, let's say, something like that, maybe 40%, 35, 40%. Now for the same period, gold, let me just mark it properly on the chart. That was there. Let's say it started there. So that's down 40%. Gold from the same period. If you bought gold the same day or the same month, let's say, that was here, wasn't it? Well, gold to its highs went from 14s and it went up 300. So that's around about, what, 25%. So, you lose around about 35% on the stock market, but you gain about 25% on gold. So you're down 10%. And as I say, because sometimes they move in tandem, sometimes you'll make on both of them. So it is literally, and the thing is, the reason that people do it is that they don't expect, when a market does drop, it drops this much. That is unprecedented. It was the fastest move in history. So those people that buy gold at the same time as the stock market tend to be in fairly good shape.
But also gives you a great point, isn't it? That's why we don't trade at 10%, because we know it can happen. Go back to 2014, 15 and look at Euro Swissy. It can happen,
Yes,
and
yes.
There are many people that don't trade anymore and potentially don't eat very well anymore because of that particular scenario.
This here.
That one right there.
Yeah.
So don't think for 1 second that it can't happen. It can happen, and it can happen in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, which it did. I mean, I probably won't be able to get short-term timeframes to go back this far, but that is even over a day. It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, this whole movement right now has taken another 6 years. So to that happen over a day, and that was the unpegging.
And we're still inside that range.
And we're still inside the range. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, really interesting. May as well just left it pegged.
Well, who knows?
Now, just the question about the Kiwi dollar. The Kiwi dollar is Jeff's trade on an hour on a weekly.
Yep, on a weekly chart.
Should leave that where it is.
Absolutely. Thanks. Do not cancel that until the high is taken out. So even you could be in that trade for 3 months. So in fact, you could be in it for 6 months. Not my style, I've got to say. But if I see a setup like that, the potential reward is substantial. So that's why I'm happy to leave that there. You'll have tons of time to manage that trade. So don't be concerned too much.
Oh, Simon said that it's bearish in May for gold. What have you got, Si, for seasonality on that? Because some of the seasonality indicators tell you the day, don't they? They tell you the day that things are going to rally, which is pretty good. But yeah, so bearish for gold in May. Looks like the commercials are looking to sell it off as well. What else have we got here?
Brian, you want the levels for the Kiwi trade? Kiwi dollar?
Yes, let's do that. Let me pass you the screen.
Okay.
A big red square. What's that?
Pass.
Is that that's not that. What was that? What's
Where?
that? There's a little I don't know. I think it's a physical product that does some sort of trading for you. I can't remember what it's called now.
Oh, here we
That
are.
people.
I got a big red square. Minus 1.15.
Oh, on Razor. Okay, mate. Sorry. Um.
You get it? I don't get it.
Well, Race Chart is the website I was on, but I don't know.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I don't know
Okay.
why I. Oh, you've got the red arrow. Is that what you mean? Maybe yours has come out as a square. Is that the one in the corner? Sorry, the end of the row or the column.
And to you, Faye,
Oh no,
is it
what would that
is
be?
what Euro Swiss?
Oh, I know what you're talking about, mate. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So we're having lots of conversations here across the
Sorry,
board.
no, Sai's talking about the monthly performance heat map. Now I
Got it.
get it. Now I get it.
Okay, Brian, there are the levels for the Kiwi trade. Yep, keep it there. No reason to do anything with that one until your stops are pretty much taken out, right? So if your stops are taken out before entry, then cancel the order. There'll be another opportunity. But whilst ever that is not the case, this remains valid because it is a lower high at a resistance level. So there's absolutely no reason to change anything here. Nothing at all. Euro Swissy, Faye, I'm not sure what we're talking about with Euro Swissy. Oh, that big decoupling back in 2000. I think it was the first of the first, wasn't it? On 2015. It's pretty much New Year's Eve or New Year's Day or something like that. Yes, that was Euro Swissy. Fortunately, we don't often see that. And as I say, the people who got caught on the wrong side of that are potentially no longer traders and finding it very, very difficult to eat because they had to sell lots of things. Okay, are we set? We are set. We've got new candles, so I should probably go around the grounds while I'm here, Ash, do you think?
Yeah, do it, mate.
Yeah, look, a little bit disappointed that this has chosen to go south as quickly as it has. This is euro dollar I'm looking at. And as you all know, once we get back into a range, we're looking for a lower high. We got that yesterday. I did mention that candle. I said there's no way I'm going to trade it because we have an untested daily pivot above us. And had I even traded that at that time, look at the mess that happened thereafter. And then somewhere mid US session, someone decided to press the button and away they went. But it's only sent the price to monthly pivot, and there it's oscillated until what, half hour ago or something. Yep. Open of London session decided to drive euro US dollar down. If that lasts, I'll be disappointed because I've missed the entry, but I'm not convinced that's the case. And I'd be looking for this to come back to test the pivots. They're all together. You can throw a blanket over them. And when that's the case, I have this unwavering thought process that says price ain't going to go too far away from them. So I'm not going to trade it back to there, but I really would like to see price go back to there, then give us the significant lower high. These aren't significant. That's insignificant. It's noise, as I said. This is not much different. And we do have an untested daily pivot above us. So there's no way I'll be trading short from here. But if we get to here, different story, I'll be looking for short. That would probably come, if we're on a 30-minute chart, as a result of test the daily pivot, better the weekly pivot. I don't have a trade line going through there, unfortunately, so I can't help but think this one's the one. Up to here, daily pivot test, get back underneath the trade line and the monthly pivot, then retest it, get some profit in the bank before there, which is the low of the day. And then you've got a pretty much free run down to these lows. So that's where I'd be looking. It looks at this very point in time as though we won't get the chance for that. It's looking fairly decisive that this wants to go short. We shall see. Dollar yen, really keen to get back short on this one as well. Yeah, look, it's not impossible. I like where we are. We've got a daily pivot sitting there, bang ahead. We've got a trade line sitting there. So we've got confluence in this area. Weekly pivot, daily pivot, get up to here. Best case scenario is test the weekly pivot, have a little bit of a fart around here, then come back underneath, retest the confluence of daily pivot and trend line, automatic invitation to go short there on dollar yen. Let me see what that looks like tomorrow. Yeah, I even thought about it today with the break and retest of the monthly pivot, but both indecisive bars. Had they been decisive break, decisive retest, then I suppose that's a decisive candle by definition, but it really is one of those bullish, bearish bars, which could do anything from here. It was very tempting to trade this short, I've got to say, at that point. But I've decided to hang on to my cash until such times as I get these smaller time frame signs that I'm looking for. That said, there's also the case. No, it's not really there, is it? Maybe here it is. There's also the case that if price were to come back inside this range and give us a higher low, this could go back to the top again. So I'm not ruling that out. It's wait and see, isn't it? Actually, that may be a better scenario. Get back above here, retest the confluence, higher low, trade it to the monthly pivot. I like it. It's probably the way I'd rather go, to be fair. And then look for the shorts off the top of the range. Okay, there's a new plan. Aussie dollar. Again, looking to get long here, and like the euro, which is going short, this is going long well before I'm ready. What I'd like to see here is exactly the same as I've just described in reverse, I suppose. Monthly pivot stepped up. Get underneath here, find the support at the monthly pivot, get back above that trend line, retest it long. And that's still my first target area. Well, it was my last target area when I was in the long, but we're out of the long now. We got out up here. That's still a juicy area, still 300 pips away or 270 odd pips away from here. So I'm really keen to get back into it, but I don't see a setup there at the moment. The thing is, and this is very much a flavor of the day thing, we're almost, but not quite. And what I mean by that is we almost came to the monthly pivot, but we didn't. Strong level here. The weekly pivot held up for a couple of weeks. And I much rather see the Aussie down there and then try to trade it long, because now we've got a situation where we've got the weekly pivot here, we've got the monthly pivot here, we've got the daily pivot in between. Gives me absolutely no confidence in terms of a direction from a pivotal or pivot point of view. So that being the case, if we can find a little range in here somewhere, that's probably where I'm at. So back down to here, oscillate. Don't see a potential entry here at the moment. I wouldn't like to see it go long, I've got to say. I want to be back in the long, but I can't go long from here. I can see a break and retest of the weekly pivot, and oftentimes that will get me just a little bit excited. There it is there on the 30-minute chart. If you are of the inclination that that is a setup, and look, I wouldn't blame you if that's the case, because I've called that many, many times before. Why am I not now? Well, it's the same old story. There's an untested daily pivot dead set below us. and I'm not trading away from it at this point. So Aussie is on hold for now. When I say retest from Brian R, am I referring to specific price actions? Well, a retest is a retest of a level. Now, whether that level is a horizontal level, Brian, whether it is a pivot, whether it is a trend line, a trade line, a rectangle, a triangle, it's something that's been broken. So in this case, and I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but it doesn't really matter. It's the same every time. This is broken. This candle here broke the weekly pivot, and this candle here retested the weekly pivot. So really and Ash calls it a back test, same thing. When we go through a level, again, regardless of whether it's horizontal or whether it's on a trend line or whatever, once you go through that line, you're expecting. This doesn't happen sometimes. It doesn't happen often. It always happens. Absolutely always. The problem we've got is it might be 4 years before it happens next.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the issue we have.
It's funny, isn't it? Because whenever I see a break where it doesn't get back to a level, then I always look at it almost like a gap that hasn't been filled.
Yeah, same thing, isn't it, really, at the end of the day? Because we know it will happen, and it will happen. But gee whiz, we just don't know when. But when it does, it gives us a strong signal. Well, in my opinion, a strong signal, because what I'm looking for is that continuation of the first move, if you like. And the converse of that, so this is a break, right? Let's call that a breakout. It's a breakout of this level. And what we're looking for is a retest of that level to convince ourselves that these guys are in charge. They're in charge if these guys can't extinguish the flame, if you like. So if they can't push price back below the low of this candle, chances are that's going to be a continuation. If, however, they do take out the low of that candle, chances are it's going to be a false break. And we actually have a little strategy in place that trades that bar, and also a strategy in place that trades that bar. So we got false break potential, trade underneath there, break continuation, trade above there. That's my little system, right? There are many other ways to do it, but the retest is basically as I've described it. I hope that answers your question, mate. But it can be anything. It can be a break of a pivot, it can be a break of a trend line. Anything will suit. So getting back to my points, I want to see a daily pivot test. If I can trade that, would I be willing? Well, I'm always willing. It's just a matter of whether the market's telling me I can. And it's kind of there. So going the opposite way, if I were to have a decisive break of that trend line and then a decisive retest, just the same as we've got here, but underneath, I'd be more inclined to go short than I would be to go long, because I've got other reasons. And that reason for me is an untested daily pivot. Daily pivot hasn't been tested for 2 days on Aussie US dollar. I expect today that may change because of probability. So I'm more willing to trade short than I am to trade long. All I need to see is a setup. But wow, I get complicated, don't I? My absolute bias is long, and I see this as my target area, which is 67.20. So I don't need to mess around here if I really don't want to. It's not a case of I have to trade this short, but I can definitely see the possibility for Aussie to go to the monthly pivot in particular, but certainly the daily pivot today. Hope that's not too complicated. It's exactly how I trade. The unpegging tank broke. There were a few brokers that went to the wall. Absolutely true, Crystal. I better move along, eh? Pound US dollar. It has not triggered the breakout beta test trade. And like a few others, we are now oscillating between the pivots. Wouldn't surprise me at all if we get a little bit of this for an extended period. Dollar CAD, if you're thinking monthly pivot, then you're probably thinking dollar CAD at the moment. That looks pretty much like a 21 bounce, does it? Wouldn't be a 32, I don't think. Jesus, I can't even read that. Levels, yellow, negative, black would be good. It is a 38.2 bounce. Okay, off the monthly pivot. So if you're a Fibbo fan, that probably looks okay to you, I would have thought. Would I be wanting to trade that long? I'm not a fan of the US dollar, full stop. I cannot see how that could be even viable to be a dominant currency that it is and has been for many, many years. And one day that won't be the case. I'm absolutely convinced of that. But when I have a look at this, what I see is the bounce off the bottom, that Fibbo thing that we just saw, and the potential for this to be a higher low. So I've really, on the basis of that, got to hold a bullish short-term bias. And that takes me up to here, 142.69. So 220 pips from here. There's a good reason just to take a trade if it does set up. And on the hourly chart, I'm looking for a trend line and I can't see one. How long do I have to wait? There's a high, there's a high. Much prefer to trade off support than resistance long, as you know, but this may set up later. So what would I like to see? I'd like to see price get below the monthly pivot and that trend line, get back above it and retest the confluence area. So retest again, Brian, that's the same thing. Break, come and retest it. So have another look at it from the other side, if you like. So we're breaking to the high side. We want to trade it from the top side. We want to get that bounce off the top where resistance becomes support, or in this case, where support becomes support becomes support and resistance becomes resistance. So it's support twice. Support here gets broken, back above it becomes support again. That's what we're looking for. So I'll be having a look at that throughout the evening to see if that does set up. Can I please demo how to enter pound US dollar OCA trade? Yes, I can. Just give me a tick. I've only got a couple to go. Dollar Swissy is coming back at us. We're still in this trade and I've got my stops at entry. We've taken 2 lots of profit. Would love to see the monthly pivot test here. This may be well worth a scale back in. And yeah, double top, lower high, another lower high here suits. So some of you would be looking for a ring high, I think you call it. Yeah, I would be too. So a nice little high test bar sitting there would get me interested. From a slingshot point of view, this being the 4-hour chart, that's going to look like break, consolidate, back underneath, retest, and away we go short. So I'll be looking for that one as well. The Kiwi, there's that weekly trade again. For those of you who haven't seen it, there's the entry level take profit 1 and 2, and your stop loss is sitting there if you want to have a look at that. You haven't seen it. And as far as now is concerned, as far as today's concerned, we have to wait till we hit the top of this rectangle, or do we? No, we don't. Okay. Because we've come back inside the range here, we've come back above the pivots. A lower high here does look interesting. So I'm interested in that. Can I find a confluence? Not on this chart, I can't. Maybe on the 30-minute I can. So what we're looking for is a trend or trade line. Trade line versus a trend line is a bit of a complex issue that I won't go into right now. But essentially, I look to trade off trade lines, and trend lines don't tell me that much at all. Yeah, look, a bullish bar here gets interesting on the 30-minute chart. So if that would produce a, what have we got left? 10 minutes, a bit of a rally in the next 10 minutes, I would trade that short. But that doesn't look likely, I've got to say. What would I do next? It's not going to set up on the hourly because I need a little bit more up here. But look for this. If this closes, in this vicinity and you get a retest of that trend line and or the weekly pivot, there may be a short on offer. Be very careful to take profit before the pivots, however. That's going to be my counsel. Righto, so that's it for the majors, Ash. Again, nothing immediate to trade.
I'd agree.
Disappointed in the euro. I hope it doesn't disappear.
Yeah.
And the pound trade, let's go back to that. And we'll explain it for Alan. Righto, Alan, here we go. It is absolutely in beta test mode at the moment. So you don't want to be putting any real money on this. It's very much a case of, okay, we're trialing it. And if we get it right, if we get the formula right, then we'll turn it into a system or a strategy. If we work on it long enough, I'm sure we'll get to that point. This is the second of the parameters that we've used since January. And we've got one more set to go, and then we'll make a decision on which is the best way to actually trade this. It's as old as the hills, the pound US dollar UK session breakout trade, but there are many, many ways to do it, and we're trying to find the best way to do it. So here's how it works. Well, here's how we're using it at the moment. Here's how we're using the system at the moment. We use the last 3 bars prior to London session on an hourly chart. So in this case today, we've got that bar there, and that bar there, and that becomes our range. Now today, the range is the same as the last bar because that's the high of the range and that's the low of the range. Once we've determined that, we put a sell entry 10 pips below the low of that bar, and we put our stop loss 15 pips above the high of that bar. We also place a long 15 pips above the high of that bar with the stop loss 10 pips below the low of that bar because it's the full range today. If it were these 3 bars, then we'd put our stops 10 pips below the low of that bar and our entry for the long, that is, 15 pips above the high of that bar. So you're actually trading the breakout of the range. Pretty much that simple. OCO stands for one cancels other. And what that means is if the long order is triggered, we cancel the short. And if the short order is triggered, we cancel the long. Once the order is triggered, we go immediately to a 15-minute chart. And we trail to, if we're triggered short, we trail 2 seller bars. What does that mean? Let me take you through yesterday's trade and I'll show you exactly what that means. Yesterday's 9 o'clock bar was that's 7, that's 8, that's 9. Okay, so the 3 bars yesterday were that one, and that one. Again, it was the 1 bar that we traded. So the high of that bar and the low of that bar. What we got was an entry 15 pips below the low, which was around about here. In fact, I've still got it on the chart. And as soon as we got triggered with that bar, we moved to a 15-minute chart. So there's your 15-minute chart going back to yesterday. And if I can find yesterday, there we go. And we were triggered in by this bar here, as you can see, going through the entry. Then immediately we went to the high side. Our stop loss was up here somewhere. We went to the high side. Then we started to get seller bars. 1, 2. As soon as you get those 2 seller bars in a row, so black bars, if you like, or red in whatever case, or close lower than the open, however you want to describe it, you move your stop loss from where it was to above that bar. So the 2 in a row, you move your stop loss to above the high. Then you get another seller bar. So you move your stop loss above this bar because you've then got 2 in a row here. And price came back and kicked us out at that point. It wouldn't have got much better. It would have got a little bit better because you might have trailed down to here if these didn't spike up. But you wouldn't have never been in a winning position on this one. Just wasn't a happy one. I think we took about 1/3 of our risk as a loss on that one. So I hope that all makes sense. No, it's not a slingshot trade at all. And no, we're not in the trade at all. We're both long and short. So we've got a long order in the market and we've got a short order in the market. But our entry, here's our short entry here. And here's our long entry here. Let me get rid of that. So those 2 red lines are our entries. As soon as we get triggered into one, we cancel the other and we go to the 15-minute chart, as I said. So if you want to have a look at it, as I said, it's in beta test mode. Do not put any serious money on this because we haven't given it the tick of approval as a system yet. So they're the entries and stop loss. Stop loss, pardon me, for the buy order is exactly the same as the entry for the short, and vice versa.
Gold has just moved back into a sellable area as well, which I'll quickly show everybody just before. Is that covered, buddy?
I think we're good, mates. Pound yen I'll have a look at in a minute, Lewis. And Sanjay, to answer your question, my experiences with OCOs are mixed. I've had some good experiences with them and I've had some bad experiences with them. I don't have a journal to tell me whether I'm a winner or a loser, to be honest. On this particular one, I do. And so far, we are about 1.33% down over the period of 4 weeks on this particular one.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, this is the area with gold. It is a sellable area. The question that everybody's going to have to pose themselves is the risk to reward worth it? The weekly daily pivot is the area that you probably need your stops to be at. That trend line's down there as well. It looks pretty good, doesn't it? When you kind of look at this as well, that looks like a break, a retest of the area. So looks like a decent area to trade from. But you're really aiming for the monthly pivot. It could be a 2-to-1 actually down there. Could be a pretty good 2-to-1 down there. I mean, you have to include spread, so maybe slightly off a 2-to-1, but you want to let this bar close until the top of the hour. I wouldn't be doing anything just yet, but that looks like a pretty good trade. And that bar isn't great, to be fair, but it wouldn't put me off. I think the fact that we broke into the downside is enough, and we do also have, as I said before, we do have this in this head and shoulders pattern going on the hourly chart. So that's the right shoulder there, and the break of the level is here. That's the break of the neckline there. So if it closes above that neckline, really all trades are off. But if we switch to a 15, then what we want to see is whether that can do that. And if it can't do that, then that would suggest some downside. Might be worth waiting because this is an engulfing bar on the 15, which would suggest that there could be some further upside here. So it might be worth waiting for one more bar into the hour and see if you can get the next 15 minutes just popping up a little bit more and failing to kind of get back into this area here. So maybe let it go through first of all. If it's going to happen, see if you can get something which would pop up first and let it go through the trend line here, and then possibly create something that brings it right back to the lows. Won't really matter where it is, but if it's somewhere near the lows down there, that's going to look pretty good. So you could take it here. trading the bottom of the bar is not going to be worth it because there's just not going to be enough room unless you trade this bar, which I would suggest is probably a little bit too dangerous. But maybe one more bar, which would suggest that that the weakness is stepping in, would be all right. But that engulfing bar is just a little bit too off-putting. And actually, where prices ended up is just inside the neckline. So there's not enough information just yet to make the trade safe. It doesn't mean it's not going to come down here, but that's not going to be the safest trade because there are still going to be traders that are going to be looking at this and thinking, okay, fine, we're back inside the neckline. We know that head and shoulders patterns tend to fail rather than work. So either this bar comes down and then you get a retest of that line in half an hour, so in 2 15 minutes, or this bar pops up and fails down here again and you get that bar. So you're waiting for a little bit more here. The fact that we're inside the neckline and the hourly bar is a hammer is also problematic. So you really do need to let this one unfold. But I would certainly put this one on a watch and see if you can get the chart to unfold the way it would make sense to you to trade it. But it looks heavy here. It certainly looks heavy when you kind of look at this one on longer term time frames. This is the 4-hour chart, and the fact that we're below the daily and the weekly pivot just does make it look a bit heavy. And it looks like we've broken down that area there. So it looks pretty good to me, mate.
All right, mate. Got a trade when you're ready.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, let's pass you the screen.
Okay, it is on Kiwi US dollar, and I think I flagged this one a little bit earlier. It is a short, and we're trading the false break of that resistance trend line. So if I zoom in a little bit, it's 30-minute chart. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see that we have broken that to the high side. We've hit the weekly pivot. We've come back underneath the trend line and we've retested it. There's only one thing I really don't like about this, and it's the size of the candle. It's a little bit tiny. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my stop out above the weekly pivot, whereas normally the strategy would call for you to trade the bar. I don't think the bar's enough. So here's the parameters. We'll be going short at what do we got? Sell stop. Short at just below that bar, rounded down, 60.57 will be the entry. And the stop loss, as I said, we'll get it right out of the way up here at 60.77. I'm going to add spreads to that, so I'm going to call it 60.79. If you're using the trade manager, you don't need to do that. The trade manager will do it for you. So we've got, what, 22 pips of stop loss. Now, pay attention. If you're trading my system, then you have to take profit before the monthly pivot, right? So that level, for those of you who don't have the monthly pivot on your chart, is at 60.50, 60.50. So you're only going to take about 7 pips of first take profit. And then your target, you don't want to go below this, your target is 60.15. Should I put this up here? Can I copy that? Probably can't. No, it wouldn't be that easy, would it? I'll have to put it up again then, righto. So we've got M30. Sell at, what was the level? 60.40, is that right? No, I can't tell. Once I get this box up here, can someone give me the sell level, please? I can't remember what it was.
What's the what is it on, mate? The
so it's the low of this bar, 30-minute chart, Kiwi dollar.
The low
rounded
of that
down.
white bar.
Yep.
Kiwi dollar. Where are we at? Here we go. Yep. Okay. Low of that worth 30-minute chart. The low of that one is 0.6057.
Awesome. Thank you, Ahmed, as well. I've got that. The stop loss is it looks like 60.79 to me. What's the high of that bar, mate?
Let's just see a chart again. The high of that white bar there on the 30 is 0.6075.
Yep, so 60.79 is good. And TP1 is, thanks guys for putting those numbers in, those of you who recorded them. TP1 is at just above the monthly pivot, right? Did anyone write the TP1 down?
Just above the monthly pivot.
They should fix that, you know. So it disables everything once you put that box up. I can't go anywhere.
The monthly, yeah, I know what you mean. The monthly pivot is at 0.6048.
So 60.50 will be, is that what I said? 60.50? It should be very close to it anyway. 0.6050 is your first take profit. Yes, that's right. And your target is, if you can give me the open of that bar, Ash, please.
The open of which bar, mate?
This one here.
Sorry, I can't see that.
Okay, there's a spinning.
Oh, sorry, yeah, down there, is it?
Yep.
The open of that low bar there. Okay. The open is 0.6022.
No, wrong one. Sorry, 2 bars on.
Oh yeah. Okay. Open is 0.6015.
Perfect. 6015. That is your target. I should have put target in there, shouldn't I? Wally.
Got gold's on a tear now to the upside. Interesting. This is going to be a brilliant bar, actually. The next 15 minutes on gold. You guys watching the 15 minutes on gold? Fascinating bar. If that one ends up being bearish, that's going to be a really good signal for some downside.
Okay, so we've now got a weekly on the Kiwi. We've now got a M30 on the Kiwi. And they are your levels, guys. All right, mates. Did I need pound yen I need to look at? Lewis, you're incorrigible. You take me away from my majors. But I've got to have a look, haven't I? Okay. My opinion on pound yen is we've come off the top and haven't put in a lower high yet. Interesting. And we haven't really come off the bottom. Don't like it, mate. Don't see a direction. It's confusing because I haven't hit the bottom and I haven't got a lower high. I guess on that basis, I'm looking for a weekly pivot or a monthly pivot test and then go short, but not pretty. So that's pretty much me wrapped, mate. I think pound has.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. As I say, everybody needs to check out gold. A fascinating 15-minute bar, 15-minute period going on right now. And if that bar ends up at the lows, that's going to be a really good signal for some downside.
You got time to show us?
Yeah, for sure. Let's have a quick look.
What's target? Faye, target is get the hell out of there. Close everything. So actually, I should explain that, shouldn't I? My TP1 is a remove 50% and move your stops as many pips as you took in profit, in this case, above entry. So if you're taking 7 pips of profit on this, then you need to move your stops 7 pips above your entry. Okay? And take half off the table. So the second part of the trade is where you make your profit. If you don't get it, then you haven't lost anything. Sorry, mate.
No problem at all. Yeah, look at this 15-minute bar going on. It's just hugely emotive. So that means that there's some volatility in gold. So promotes it as a really good trade if it's going to be available. This bar ends up down these lows. Now, there's going to be an issue now because really the profit is only going to be a 1-to-1, because if you do end up trading this bar, you could conversely just let it settle down. There's still a possibility that this goes high. We just had the last 5-minute bar close, and the 5 has just given us the lack of ability to stay above this particular level, but it's probably going to have another grab at that. And if it does end up to the upside, then let's just have a look whether gold looks like a long at in any way, shape, or form. And it doesn't. You know, when you look at gold, and you look at gold on a 4-hour chart, the 4-hour chart is not expressing an upside until or if it gets through this area here. So realistically, this could still pop up to this point and still be negative. So there wouldn't be a long, even if that bar did end up fairly positive. You know, it would just suggest that we're probably still flushing out a little bit, and there's still some upside maybe on the day before we do possibly come down. I mean, as Simon says, that May is a bit negative for gold, and looking at precious metals across the board, you do see some negativity. But it might just be too early. You know, we're only in the fifth day of May, so there's no guarantee that this is on the move to the upside, but so to the downside just yet. But this is certainly suggesting now that if we look at this on the hourly, that all of a sudden we've now managed to genuinely test that area. So we're just under this weekly pivot. This does suggest some negativity depending on how the bar ends. And as I say, it may well be, considering this bar, it may well be that we have to wait really to the top of the hour. You know, making sure that that if we are going to be trading on the 15-minute, that the hours close before we wait for that, before we start trading that 15-minute. That would be the most sensible thing to do. And certainly with this volatility currently going on, with a buying pressure going on, then we want to see what this bar ends up like, rather than possibly you know, waiting for these shorter term timeframes. It certainly could give us a signal, and if it shoved its way back down there, that would be a fairly strong signal. But I'd probably still want to wait for the next 3 bars just to suggest whether we are going down again. And if we were to go down from this point, the likelihood is, with this emotion in the trade, that we'd likely test the lows from below anyway. So if we break down, we're likely to come back and then go, rather than just fall off. So I think we're waiting on this one now, mate. I think that there's just way too much emotion, as I say, out there to trade gold at this stage. So I think we just leave it where it is.
I certainly will, mate. That's my MO on gold, is leave it where it is and give it a toss.
Yeah.
What happens. I've got a couple of questions I need to answer, if you're done.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, to Brian, first up, point 3 will be on anything 4 hours and over. Point 5, sorry, I should read the question for those of you who haven't read it. When do I decide to take point 3 as my first TP1 or as my first profit off the table? And when do I decide to take half off the table? On a 30-minute chart, or, well, I won't use lower, 30-minute 1 hour, it will always be half. And the reason is, because I don't know with a large degree of certainty that I've got the direction right until it goes through a level. So in terms of getting 50% off the table, and this goes to your question too, Alan, let's go to the Kiwi and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Here we're taking profit at this level, right? Or before this level, because I've got no idea whether it's going to bounce off it or go through it. Absolutely no idea. What I am confident of, that if it goes lower than here, it will go to there. So I'm going to remove 50% off the table, because what happens next is completely undetermined and uncertain at this time. So that's what I'll be looking to do. take half off here, get my stops exactly the same as I've taken in profit above the entry. And if it then goes and bounces off here and goes to heaven in a skyrocket, then guess what happens? The very worst thing that can happen is I've got a break-even trade. If, of course, it goes to our target, that's where we make money. We don't make a whole lot of money. And this is to your point, Alan. The risk reward is extremely low if you're a trend trader. If you're trading in an intraday scenario that is looking for maybe 30 pips profit inside the average true range, then it's quite okay. I'm more than happy to accept 1 to 1 or 1.5 to 1 as the final result. What we would effectively have here, if we've got a risk of, let's say, 22 pips, which is what we've got here, we're going to take roughly a third off. A third of the risk, if you like, based on pips at that point. So we're going to take half off the table. So let's say we're trading this at 1%, and we're taking a half of 1/3. So it's absolutely SFA, bugger all. That's not the point. The point is you can't lose once you get to there. Then you've got another half of that 2/3 left in here. So what have we got? We've got 46, so double. That will become a 1-to-1 trade. So effectively, if you've got 2-to-1 risk, then you're going to have a 1-to-1 result. The key to the strategy is exactly that. When you trade anything, you're weighing up one versus the other, risk versus reward. When you take a high risk trade, you expect a high reward. When you take a low risk trade, you expect a low reward. This strategy, the way that I trade it, gives you about an 80% plus win-loss ratio if you trade it properly. And the trade-off there is low risk, low reward. That's why we do what we do. Because if we're looking at, let's say, 10 trades, we expect to get 4 winners, 4 break even, and 2 losers. That's over history. So that gives you, when I say 80% win-loss, we count our break evens as win because we generally take 55% off the table at that first TP1. So that's the trade-off. We trade off reward for risk. And any financial product that you trade is in exactly the same ratio. The more you risk, the more your reward's going to be. Less you risk, less reward's going to be. It's time old thing that you just cannot change. Meaning once TP1, move the stop loss to the entry for the other trade, not to the entry. So let's say we take 7 pips off the table here, right? So we bank at 7 pips. Then we move our stop loss 7 pips from entry. So what we gain here, we're prepared to lose here, but only that much. Because that then takes us out +7, -7, break even. Okay. Parameters for Kiwi dollar, they're there. There's the 30-minute and there's the weekly. I should have put weekly up there. All good. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense now. And you're absolutely bang on the money. The risk reward is low compared to probably what you're used to. But that's the 30-minute chart. We get it right out. So 7 pips above the entry. Yes, correct. Some bad news from Germany cancelled ECB's QE. Oh, okay. Interesting. You're welcome, Faye. Is it valid? I don't know. I haven't seen that news. Don't know. Sorry. We'll probably catch up with that mid-session. Mate, I am done. Ash is nodded off.
Sorry, mate, I was muted. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that ECB or heard about that. But yeah, I'll look into that.
I think you'll
Yeah,
find
I'm
that's
done too.
going to be common around the central banks now. And Australia's done it this morning. It hasn't cancelled it, but they have scaled it back.
Well, I suppose when it comes down to Germany, that they've got a responsibility to quite a few other countries, 26 to be exact, or maybe 27 still. So I think
Whoa,
that might have a bit more implication
you're right,
than
Chandru. Big impact on the euro.
yeah, big impact on the euro. Let's have a look at the euro very, very quickly.
Got to say, I'm happy to see that.
Yeah, that's coming down, isn't it?
Well, it spiked up to the daily pivot, so that gets that out of the road. Now I can go
Yeah,
short. Whether I
yeah,
want to go short now is another story.
yeah, yeah. And I wonder whether that was why gold was moving as it was.
Maybe.
Interesting. Let's see if we can delve a bit deeper into that particular story. Gold has settled down somewhat. So I think we need to see what's going to happen with this particular story and whether it's going to make an impact on the way these markets are going to move today. But if it doesn't, then I suppose we get back to some kind of normality of trend. But right now, it's certainly looking like that may well have an impact. I suppose people are sifting through what the details of that currently are, but I don't know them just yet.
Yeah, no, nor do I. Absolutely not. That looks
Okay.
interesting, though. Break and retest of the month. Take that candle out of the equation. That looks interesting. I'm going to have to dig a little bit deeper myself before I trade that.
Okay. Well, we'll be back for the US session, mates, and obviously we'll be back tomorrow on here, same trade time, same trade channel at 5 to 8, and we'll get on with. Sorry, dude. Yeah, you go ahead.
You prick. That's a date. Don't be late.
All right. See you guys. See you later on.